All right, it is time to talk Abeloth. Welcome back to the Force with Friends podcast. This is episode number 9. It's kind of crazy to think. My name is Will with the Padawan Pops YouTube channel, and this is my co-host Kevin. How's it going, Kevin?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm ready to move on from Ahsoka. As much fun as that was, it'll be fun to kind of branch out and hit all sorts of subjects now. So, although we're still kind of following up with it.
For sure. So Kevin has just got back from camping out in the woods. That was dedication, not going while Ahsoka was actually streaming,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, planned it that way.
Yeah. So today is going to be pretty simple. One of the biggest things from Ahsoka episode 8 was that cliffhanger with Baylan, the literal cliffhanger that he's standing on the edge of the cliff. And we're going to talk a little bit about Abeloth in Star Wars lore and legends and who Abeloth is and what Abeloth maybe has to do with the story and really why we think that it's Abeloth. But before that, just a couple quick Star Wars news and noteworthy things to run down. First of all, there's some news out about Skeleton Crew with all these strikes and everything over. There was some papers submitted, and it looks like Skeleton Crew is slated for a January 2024 release date, tentatively at this point. I believe their original release date was winter 2023, so that's really not that big of a push. And honestly, 4 months of nothing new to kind of build up to something new, I'm okay with that. So maybe January 2024 Skeleton Crew. The only other news, and this is really more for the collectors out there like myself, is New York City Comic-Con is going on right now. There's going to be a lot of cool collectible things coming out, Funko Pops, other Star Wars collectible items, plus from a lot of other fandoms. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that as well. You think you'll ever be a collector?
I don't know if I have the time to start that right now.
You're too responsible.
Yeah. When my kids are older and life has settled, maybe then.
Yeah, for sure. Just jumping right in, I've teased this a little bit. If you saw my video that dropped on Thursday, Kevin is kind of the resident expert on Star Wars Legends. So Kevin, we see at the end of Ahsoka episode 8, Baylan's on Peridia. He's walking around on that cliff, and he walks out onto these sculptures that are the Mortis gods. He looks out and he sees this fortress with a light shooting out of the top of it, very reminiscent to Anakin showing up on Mortis in the Clone Wars Mortis arc. But there's a lot of people, myself included, who believe that this is going to be Abeloth or a type of Abeloth, if you will. So someone along the lines. So for all of the Star Wars fans like myself who did not know what Abeloth was until 14 days ago when you told me about it, what is Abeloth?
Well, first off, I think it's really fun that I'm even sitting here talking about Abeloth because I'm curious if other people who are familiar with it feel this way. But like, this is really the last thing I ever would have expected Star Wars to pull in, because Abeloth's a pretty weird out there, even for Star Wars. It's kind of a weird character, but you know, with all the Night Sister stuff and the weird magic that we've had coming in, it's starting to seem like it's not that weird anymore. So for somebody like me who I once thought all this legend stuff was gone, and now we're starting to see some of it creep back in, it's really cool that we're even just sitting here talking about it, because again, this is like the last thing I would have expected to be back into Star Wars years ago when it was introduced. But yeah, so Abeloth is tied in really closely with the Mortis gods. I think I talked about it a little bit last week, but you know, Dave and George did the Mortis thing with Clone Wars, and then it was about a year later. Some of the stories, there was a series of books called Fate of the Jedi, I think, that involved this character Abeloth, and we find that she was tied in with the Mortis gods. And so, long story short, before the Mortis gods were on Mortis, right? They lived kind of in a place where they would be away from everyone, and Abeloth was the servant to them. She helped out. She helped keep the son and daughter in check. The son and daughter had, this is kind of a lot, they had drank from these two different pools of the Force, right? So the son drank from the font of power. The daughter drank from the I think it was the wellspring of knowledge, something along those lines, pool of knowledge, maybe. And so that's how they kind of became aligned with light and dark. And so they kind of became to embody those things. And so the servant eventually becomes the mother. She's helping take care of them. She kind of becomes part of the family. Eventually she realizes she's going to die. She's afraid of losing her family. So she goes and drinks from one pool, bathes in the other. And instead of just gaining immortality, which she does, she's also turned into this pretty evil, corrupt, awful entity known as Abeloth. It's not really a physical entity anymore. She's very much kind of like a force entity. So the father locks her away. They flee this planet and leave her there. They end up on Mortis. That's all the legends, right? So then that's where it would pick up in the Clone Wars, where we actually see Mortis and we see Anakin and Ahsoka and Obi-Wan there. But yeah, so she's essentially this evil force deity that's just been imprisoned for many eons of years. No one really knows how long, and she would awaken to wreak some pretty big havoc in the legend stuff. So
Okay.
that's kind of the
Very,
short version
yeah.
of who is Abeloth.
No, that's good. And I had read up a little bit, like the too long didn't read version of Abeloth. And
Yeah.
so that does give a little bit more detail. Sounds like kind of goes after the best of both worlds with the light and the dark. And just from the concept art pictures I've looked up, because I don't know if there's actually anything official, given that it's all in literature, but there's some pretty creepy images out there of what people would assume Abeloth looks like. So definitely, if you're watching, run a quick Google search. There's a lot of creative ideas for what Abeloth even looks like.
Yeah, I bet her Wikipedia page has gotten a lot of traffic recently. So
oh yeah, those stats would be pretty cool to see.
It would be interesting to see. But yeah, no, she's super weird. She's got like tentacle arms and like a big mouth full of sharp teeth and very weird. So even for Star Wars.
So obviously we really have all come to this conclusion. Like if you just Google, or not Google, but you go on YouTube and you search in Abeloth Ahsoka or something like that, you're going to see video after video of tons of Star Wars content creators, myself included. You might not see my stuff on the search engine because I don't have quite as many viewers, but there's a lot of people discussing it and have all come to this conclusion that it seems as if this is going to be Abeloth here calling to Baylan. That was Baylan's big mystery, is what is calling to him. And there are Star Wars fans like you and others that were big into the EU that are thinking, hey, this is it. We know this story. So why is it that we are all thinking, hey, this is going to be Abeloth? I mean, I know you gave a little bit of a background there with the Mortis arc and everything like that. Tell me why you think specifically this is Abeloth, and maybe if you can touch on the time travel aspect that we had talked about.
Oh yeah, it is interesting to hear a lot of other people talking about it, because a lot of this stuff I feel like it's just a shot in the dark. But then you hear so many other people bringing it up. It's like, oh, maybe this does seem like the likely thing. But yeah, it just makes sense, right, for kind of where the story is and what we're seeing, and in terms of how the story went for Abeloth in the books. I mean, one of the big things is how closely she's tied to Mortis, right? I think the biggest thing you can point at is that Dave Filoni likes to continue his stories, right? And so how we've seen, I mean, Ahsoka's been in 3 main shows now, 4 or 5 if you count Mando and Tales of the Jedi, right? And so then we see Rebels characters carried over, we see Rex and other clone troopers carried over. Mortis has been carried over into 3 shows now. World Between Worlds has been carried over between shows. Like Filoni likes to carry on his stories, right? And so with us moving into territory where it seems the Mortis gods are going to play some sort of part, it just makes sense to kind of go in a direction where some of that stuff's already been laid out. I think it was Diamond Fig's account where he had posted a video of Filoni talking about how if it exists, why not already go ahead and pull it, right? Like if it makes sense and it exists, let's do that. And so the stuff surrounding it just makes sense. You know, you got this seemingly evil force presence that's waking up, right? It sounds a lot like Abeloth tied to the Mortis gods. But then something's calling Baylan, and that was kind of a hallmark of Abeloth, as she called force users to her. She did some weird things with the minds of force users, but that was kind of something you saw a lot in the legends, is that she called out these force users so that she could use them essentially.
Wasn't one of them Jason Solo, like when he succumbed to the dark side or something like that?
Well, you're getting into some complicated stuff now.
No, I can leave it there maybe.
Jason Solo was partly responsible for how she got out.
Gotcha.
He learned something called flow walking, which allowed him to move through and see different parts of time in a place.
Oh,
and
so that's kind of
where
World Between Worlds sounding.
And Abeloth was imprisoned and couldn't really escape. She would start to escape, but the Mortis gods would re-imprison her. But one of the things that often allowed her to get out was when, again, the EU called it the current of the Force, when it changed. Now, if that was when somebody messed with time, which is really interesting because you and I talked about this today. I was curious if, because these stories were written right after, they came out a year after the Mortis arc in the Clone Wars.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I have to wonder if Filoni was involved in any of that storyboarding, and if even Abeloth could have been his idea, right? Like you got to think he might have been somewhat involved with
Yeah.
the follow up that expanded on what he had literally just done. So that's interesting to think about. But one of the things that I thought back to is in the Mortis arc. The father admonishes the son when he's trying to show Anakin who he's going to become,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, you can't mess with time, right? That at that point it's a throwaway
Mm.
statement. But then when these books come out, it's like, well, changing time is what lets out Abeloth. Like suddenly that statement becomes like a lot bigger. And so that's kind of cool. The existence of the Mortis dagger, right? Like why
Mm-hmm.
do these Mortis gods have a dagger that can kill a
Yeah.
force deity? Why have that laying around, right? Unless it's not for them. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of really interesting things that point to that maybe a lot of this stuff could have already been planned and in place at the time. It's hard to know if they had their own thing they wanted to do, or if this was kind of a carry on from what he had done. But there's a lot of interesting stuff. So
No, for sure. Obviously, that's a lot to internalize because it's a lot of different.
It's a lot
stories.
of stuff I just threw out there. So
yeah.
Those of you who just slip into that Star Wars lore vomit, I apologize.
Yeah, so no, I think that's good because people would have to spend hours and hours and hours of reading to get all of that. So I think it is good to hear a quick rundown.
Yeah.
But everything, just layman terms like that, I'm going to explain it back to you as if I'm 5, is Abeloth is this really bad, powerful force user of the little Mortis genre. And when there's a ripple in time, ripple in the force type thing, it sounds as if that could be a way for Abeloth to get out. And we see that in the World Between Worlds, whether it be with Rebels. I mean, how long has Abeloth been calling out to Baylan? Maybe it's been
That's
going
a good
on
question.
since Ezra and Ahsoka were in there in Rebels, which would have been around a year before episode 4. So you're looking at a good little time frame there. Or is it kind of something that happened once Anakin and Ahsoka are in the World Between Worlds? I think there's probably some room to be creative there, if nothing else.
Sure.
But everything to me it kind of lines up. And like you said, I think it was in Diamond Fig's video where he finds all these great Dave Filoni quotes, by the way.
He does.
If you don't
I love it's a great place just to catch great little snippets of Filoni. So
follow Will at Diamond Figs. He's got like all the Star Wars resources and reels and shorts and stuff, plus long form content now pretty much every day. I'm a member of his channel and it's one of my favorite ones to watch. So if it's already there, Filoni, he's got to be very involved. Whether he came up with Abeloth or not, he was within the discussions, if I had to guess. He's for sure aware of it. Yeah. I mean, we were talking
the books. They did storyboard stuff with the this was before Disney bought it, and I know a lot of it had to go through the Lucas group, right?
The whole team.
You couldn't just write a story whenever you wanted to and publish it.
Right. So they were a lot more secure back then, I believe.
Yeah.
But Dave, I think you and I were talking about this when earlier today you were like, I can't believe I'm about to talk a half hour about Abeloth. And the thing is, Dave is like one of us. I mean, obviously he knows George's mind better than any of us, but it's like such a breath of fresh air that we have a guy that's running these stories now that knows all the lore and cares about all the lore. And if he needs to pull something from it, he can. I think it's a good thing to happen in Star Wars. It certainly isn't bad. Yeah. So it's an exciting time to be a fan, but let's say it is Abeloth. We're just going to go with that assumption. Now, if all the Star Wars fans are in agreement about a thing, maybe it's not going to be Abeloth. Maybe that's the surefire sign that we're all wrong. If we all think it. I was going to say,
I feel like we did this with Starkiller, right? We're all like, oh, this guy's Starkiller. It's totally Starkiller. And then he just gets knocked off and he's nobody. And we're like, okay, we're wrong.
We had no Star Wars backing for that other than the credits.
We just kind of thought it would be cool.
Yeah. Sam Witwer was there and a play on the name. So this seems a lot more grounded in the lore at least. But I could see it being a thing to where we were all wrong. But we talked about it for a while, so that was fun. But
if nothing
we're
else,
just gonna talk the next 10 minutes or so along the assumption that it is Abeloth. So Abeloth is calling to Baylan. Baylan is gonna make his way to that fortress with the light coming out. and he's going to release this monster. What does
Yeah.
it mean for Star Wars? So first, I want to ask what you think it means, and then I'm going to give you my theory after that.
I think it's a long term. I don't think this is going to be part of the Ahsoka show or whatever's going on with the Mandoverse right now. I think if you try to do that, it sells the character short, because this was a character who was really heavily disruptive with like the Jedi. And so part of what you and I talked about before is the possibility of it coming through in like the new movie that's going to be coming out with Rey and her training new Jedi, because that's what Abeloth did, right? She messed with the Jedi. She kind of got in their minds. She caused this thing called force psychosis, which would cause people to go crazy, and they thought everybody else was an imposter, and they just start attacking people. And so the Jedi became a threat. All the force users became a threat. And it actually took Luke teaming up with a group of Sith called the One Sith, I think was the name of their group. They got away with the rule of two, but he and a guy named Darth Krayt ended up having to join forces to defeat Abeloth. And so she was a character who was not just handled easily, right? Like it was a lot of havoc that was caused. And so I think you need kind of a bigger base of things for it to disrupt. Right now, things are still kind of already disrupted, right? I feel like just throwing her in the mix would not fit well for her character. So I think things have to stabilize first. It has to be where things have kind of restarted and rebegun, which I could see happening with the movie in the future. So
yeah. Okay, so I just had an idea. I want to say it really quick so I don't forget it. But you were tying it into the Rey movie, and I think that's where we're going anyways. But you're saying Luke had to team with a group of bad guys to essentially make it work. Well, Rey is a Palpatine. So what if she's able to kind of be the anti-Abeloth with the best of both worlds, but she chooses good? I think that would maybe parallel and work out. I don't know. I mean, we're thinking years down the road, but
because obviously it's not set up exactly the same, right? There's a lot of elements that are different. A lot of in the legends, a lot of the Jedi that went crazy were Jedi that were hidden in what they called the Maw, which is where she was hidden during the Yuzun Vong War. Yeah. And so they kind of she made contact with them then as kids, and then they went crazy later on. And so all of that stuff's not there, right? So there's definitely going to be some creative liberties in how it would play out and how the character would work. But I could see it being a big thing that really wakes up and comes to fruition later on. So
I think as far as my prediction goes, now again, this is all under the premise that it is Abeloth, but when they announced the new set of movies, they were on the stage at Star Wars Celebration, and they announced a Force Origins movie. They announced a New Republic movie, and then a Rey movie. So the new Jedi Order. It was like a past, present, future thing. I think what they're going to do is this present, they're going to give all of us fans what we want with the Heir to the Empire sequel, essentially, or reboot is what this is. Yeah. And then going back to the Force Origins, I think we're going to get this story of Abeloth, right? Like, I think we're going to get the whole Mortis arc. Nothing is thrown in by mistake. So I think we're going to have a father, daughter, son, Abeloth story in that Force Origins, or at least have it be a portion of that story, because they kind of are the origins of the Force to an extent, right? Like, and
I was thrown off by the title of that, because isn't the project called Dawn of the Jedi or something? But then it talks about origins of the Force, which I feel like those things are not necessarily the exact same thing. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to know. I feel like they're gonna.
That's what I hope they do, though. Yeah, I hope that they do exactly what you're saying. I think that would be great.
Yeah, well, I think as far as the Dawn of the Jedi goes, I think you got to have a little bit of backstory to that, too. So while the whole movie may not be focused on it, we get some story on it. And then I do think this thing's going to be revealed. I don't feel like this is a Skeleton Crew reveal. I don't know. I feel like that show is going to be really the vehicle to get Ahsoka and Sabine back to the galaxy. That's my guess on that. But I do think we'll get little things sprinkled in here and there, kind of the Marvel big picture approach to where every single movie mattered. And then we're gonna, at the end of this story with the Thrawn movie and whatever, we obviously are gonna see Thrawn defeated, and the New Republic will have 20 years of good or whatever it is before the First Order shows up. But I think it could be like a post-credit scene or very end of the movie, something like that, where we do get, okay, here's this Abeloth, Baylan or whoever has let her out, and then we jump forward to that Rey movie and we see this is the big threat. So Rey's existential threat to her new Jedi Order is this Abeloth creature, monster, whatever, coming into the galaxy, causing whatever issues that Abeloth might cause that you've
Yeah.
described in this video. And we see this big unity amongst stories from the beginning of the Force to, we can just say, the heir to the Empire. That's the original trilogy era. Like, we're not fooling anybody. That's the time
Yeah.
frame. And
Yep.
then the sequel trilogy era. So you want to talk about a bridge? That's the bridge, because Mortis is
Yeah.
already the prequels, so it's already there. Like, that's laid
Yeah.
the groundwork. This can be a thing that really unites all of Star Wars on one page without it having to be Emperor Palpatine that does it.
That's a good point.
I
Yeah.
think it's
Because
cool.
it's branched so far out now from just, like you said, just the saga of the original and then the prequels and the sequels. There's so many other things. Like it very well could kind of bridge all that, which would be really interesting.
As far as a course correction goes, for people that don't like the sequels, I think what we're seeing now in the Mandoverse is bridging that gap a little bit more. There's some really good books that are in between episodes 6 and 7. I recommend reading. I've enjoyed reading the comics, the books, everything like that, and it has enhanced my sequel viewing experience. It doesn't mean it's a very great or continuous story, but it's made it make more sense. And so if you throw this in on the back end of it, it sets up the sequel trilogy being, okay, going forward, this is Rey's story. How did she get here? Oh, she was involved with all these other Star Wars characters that we already know, and she had a connection there. And you bring her out into this new story, maybe, hopefully, a continuous story. And I really think we can look back 10, 15 years from now and say, wow, this is one great big story, and it's really fun to take in any part of it. And I like that idea.
Yeah, that's I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point. You can definitely, I mean, because both of us, we weren't super fans of the sequels, right? And
not all of it.
Yeah, not all of it. Parts of it were okay, but you can definitely build around stuff and improve it, right? And so I do hope that's what they do, because I would love to feel like that's like a better part of a bigger picture at some point. So that would be cool if they're able to pull that off way down the road. To your point though, I do think they'll just stick on Thrawn right now. I hope that's what they do, because I want to see this story, right? Like I feel like he deserves all the story arc right now, and so I think they'll stick with that, and this will be something that maybe is alluded to, like you said, but it's definitely going to be down the road. One of the things I just thought about with Baylan, because we still don't know what's going to happen with Baylan, right? But one of the things Abeloth could do was she could possess Force users and shapeshift, right? She could turn into different appearances. She wreaked a lot of havoc that way because she had a bunch of avatars kind of all over the place. And so I don't know if that's where you explain what happens to Baylan, right? That he gets possessed and she just changes the appearance. I don't know.
Yeah, they probably didn't plan for that, but I mean, if that's the route they're going, it could work. I mean, it's not ideal, but
like I said, it's fun to sit here and talk about this because Abeloth is such a cool character. She fits really well into Star Wars, right? She's this tragic character who, of fear of losing family, right, seeks power and becomes corrupted and becomes this evil thing, right? It fits very well into the arcs and kind of the themes of Star Wars. And so I'm excited. I hope this is what it is. I think it'll be a really cool story down the road. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people out there who won't like it.
Of course.
But because it's a little weird for Star Wars. I'll give you that. But
it's a lot, for sure.
It's a lot. It's a whole lot. But at the same time, I think it can be developed into a really cool story arc. So I hope that's where we're going. I think that would be a lot of fun. But
I think so too. I know that was a lot all at once. That's about all we have to say on Abeloth. We went over who it is, why we think it could be, and what does it mean going forward. So next week, Kevin, do you have any ideas for what you want to talk about?
I don't know. Like I said, I've been gone for the last few days, so my brain's kind of been gone other places.
I was thinking we could do is talk about things we would like to see in these, not in the Skeleton Crew, but in this time frame maybe that Ahsoka and Sabine are going to be doing on this planet. So if that seems like an interesting topic to you, maybe we can talk about, okay, what are we going to see with Ahsoka and Sabine here? How do we think we get back to the galaxy with them? And then once they get back, what does that galaxy look like?
I think that would be interesting because we're pretty sure we know what's going to be happening on the other side, right? Like,
right.
we're going to have Thrawn in the war that's about to ensue. So it would be interesting to sit down and ponder on what's going to be happening, because I mean they're stuck there apparently, right? Like they
Yeah.
don't seem like they're leaving anytime soon. So
Yeah.
it will be interesting to think about what's going to be happening there during that time. So
Yeah.
I think that'd be fun.
Cool. So you heard it here. Next week, we're talking Ahsoka and Sabine in exile. How are they going to prepare for their jump back? How do they get back? And when they get back, what kind of galaxy do they find? What fight are they walking into? So, Kevin, be theorizing on that. I will be letting the wheels turn on that as well. Otherwise, thanks so much, everyone, for watching and listening. This is now on Spotify as well as YouTube. So if you would prefer just to listen to us instead of look at us talk, which no one could blame you if you chose that, you can find us on Spotify. The link will be in the bio or on the description if you're watching on YouTube. Otherwise, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Star Wars content daily. And we will see you guys next week. As always, may the Force be with you.